Welcome back to Minnie Makes. My name is Callie, and today we're making a slightly sweet and ultra fluffy brioche bread. So this recipe is surprisingly simple, especially if you're using a stand mixer like I will be using today. However, if you would like to see a how-to video of how to make brioche bread by hand without a stand mixer, let me know in the comment section and I'll be sure to provide that for you. But this recipe is so delicious, it's decadent, and it's absolutely to die for. You are gonna love it, and I can't wait to share it with you. So let's jump right in, but before we do, as always, please remember to subscribe, like, share, chat in the comment section, and follow me on social media for more recipes and additional content. So let's go over the ingredients. Here I have 1 large egg, a couple of egg yolks. I have 1 stick of softened unsalted butter. It needs to be very, very soft. I have a little bit of vanilla. I have some water, honey. I'm using a little bit of buttermilk, some active dry yeast, sugar, and in here I have flour, salt, and some additional sugar. Okay, so first things first, we need to activate the yeast, which is really simple. I'm gonna show you how to do that. You have to take some water and put it in a small saucepan. You could also do this in the microwave. And you wanna heat up the water over about high heat, and you want the water to ideally be between 100 and 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And the best way to know if the water is at the correct temperature is to use an instant read thermometer. However, if you don't have an instant read thermometer, I have a little hack for you to know whether or not the water is warm enough. What you're gonna do is stick your finger in the water. If the water is so hot you need to yank your finger out, the water is too hot. If you put your finger in the water and it's quite hot but not so hot you need to yank your finger out, it's good to go. You by no means want it to be boiling, by the way. That is the indicator it is too hot. So my water is warm enough. I'm just gonna cut the heat and I'm gonna add this water into my active dry yeast along with the sugar. And now I'm going to just stir this and then let this sit for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, you should see tons of foam and bubbles. This should really transform into like a big puffy cloud over the surface of this mixture, and that should happen, like I said, within about 10 minutes. So I'm just gonna set this aside. I'm going to shuffle some things around, and then we're gonna continue. Okay, so while the yeast activates, and I can already see some action happening right now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna combine all of our dry ingredients. So that is both of our egg yolks, our large egg. I'm gonna add the buttermilk and the vanilla and the honey. And so most brioche recipes don't use buttermilk, but I love using buttermilk in this recipe because it's gonna add so much moisture and fat to this bread that already requires a really high kind of fat content that you get in the form of butter. But the buttermilk is just gonna add to that, and it's gonna make it even more like decadent and soft, and it's going to be amazing. So you just have to trust me on that. So now I'm just gonna give this just a quick mix to sort of combine here. Okay, so next what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna give all my dry ingredients, so that's the rest of my sugar, my flour, and my salt, just give it a quick stir, just so it combines. Okay, so my yeast is finished activating, and as you can see here, it is completely transformed into a big puffy cloud. And one of the perks of using just like a small amount of water to activate the yeast is that if you're not familiar with activated yeast and what it's supposed to look like, when you activate it with such a small amount of water, it is so obvious that the yeast is activated. It really does transform, and you'll have no doubt that it is activated. So next I'm gonna add in my wet ingredients. So basically the rest of my ingredients besides the butter into my stand mixer, and then I'm just gonna turn my stand mixer on to about medium, and I'm just gonna knead it for a few minutes until all of the ingredients have combined. Okay, so all of my ingredients are nice and combined. So next what we're gonna do is we're gonna start slowly adding in the butter. So to do this, what you're gonna wanna do is add about a couple tablespoons at a time. You do not need to measure this. I'm gonna turn my mixer on to medium, and I'm gonna let this beat for like maybe 45 seconds. We just wanna give it, the butter, a little bit of time to incorporate into the dough, and then we're just gonna keep repeating that same process of adding a couple tablespoons of butter into the dough, mixing it for 30, 45 seconds for it to combine, and then until all the butter is gone, be sure to occasionally go in with your spatula and scrape down the bottom and the sides of your stand mixer, because sometimes the batter does tend to kind of collect in the bottom of the sides. So make sure it's all incorporated. So I'm gonna get going on that, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so I do want to point out as I add the butter that you might notice while you're mixing the dough that it's kind of, the butter is sort of pooling on the bottom and the sides, and it kind of looks like the butter is sort of just like spreading around the bowl. That's okay. Just keep adding the butter. Just keep doing exactly what I told you, and it's all going to come together after a while. So it looks kind of funny, but you have to trust me on this. So I'm going to continue adding this, and then we'll proceed. Okay, so all the butter has been incorporated, and what you probably can notice at this point is that the dough looks like a big kind of buttery mess. It is by no means in like a cohesive ball at this point. That's exactly what it should look like. So now what we're gonna do is we're going to turn this on to medium, and we're gonna knead this for 10 minutes, scraping the bottom and the sides occasionally with a spatula. So set a timer, 10 minutes, knead this, and then I'll show you what it looks like at that point. Okay, so 10 minutes later and we are back. I'm gonna show you what the dough looks like. It is still very kind of sticky and elastic and, you know, kind of tacky, and that's exactly how it should look. It's still even kind of sticking to some of the sides, and that's okay. This dough is meant to be this way. It's meant to be kind of sticky and really well hydrated. Okay, so I greased up my work surface. I'm gonna take my spatula and I'm going to scoop this dough out of my bowl. So I'm gonna set this aside. I'm gonna grease up my hands. And the reason why we're using grease and not flour is I really wanna keep this dough really well hydrated. So I don't wanna incorporate more flour. I just wanna add a little bit of oil just so it doesn't stick as much. And I'm just trying to kind of take the, I'm kind of trying to just seal the dough off a little bit. So just kind of grabbing it all, taking it in like this, just kind of forming this into a ball. Add oil as needed to your hands if you feel like things are getting too sticky. It does not have to be perfect, okay? So that looks good. Now I'm gonna grab a large bowl. You could use the bowl from your stand mixer if you're using a stand mixer, but mine is actually pretty shallow, so I just grabbed a bowl that's a little bit larger. And now what we're gonna do, the hard part is over for making this brioche, I promise you. I added a little too much oil. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna plop this greased ball of brioche into a large bowl. I'm gonna cover this with plastic wrap, and I'm gonna pop this into a warm spot for, I would say, probably a minimum of 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours. You want the dough to get really nice and puffy. Because this is a brioche dough and there's a lot of fat in here, it's not gonna rise as quickly as, say, like a pizza dough would. So don't be alarmed if it doesn't truly double in size right away. It's gonna continue to rise when we put it in the refrigerator overnight. But now, cover this for 2 to 3 hours until it gets nice and puffy, and I'll show you what it looks like exactly when it's there. After 2 to 3 hours, once it gets nice and puffy, we're gonna just pop it into the refrigerator overnight and then finish this mess tomorrow. And truly, the hard part really is over. So I will show you what this looks like when it is ready, and then again into the refrigerator overnight. Okay, welcome back. It is day 2 of brioche making, and my brioche was in the refrigerator overnight. I took it out of the refrigerator an hour ago and just let it sit at room temperature for an hour, and here we are. So now we are almost done. I'm gonna show you how to braid this brioche. It's really, really simple. So you want to flour your work surface pretty generously. And you don't have to braid the brioche. I like doing it. It's kind of one of those things that looks really impressive, but secretly it's really, really easy, which is the case honestly with plenty of other recipes as well. So here we go. And so you may notice once you take your dough out of the refrigerator that you might not see a whole lot of growth. It might not have really rose a whole lot, but that's okay. That is pretty typical of cold fermenting, which is putting the dough in a refrigerator. It's not gonna rise a whole lot, but a lot is going to happen in that time. It's really gonna increase the flavor when you refrigerate this overnight. There is going to be some growth, even if it is not the most noticeable, and it's gonna make forming this brioche while the dough is chilled like this a whole lot easier. So just, you have to trust me on this. So this is how it goes. I have my dough here, and I'm just gonna cut it into 3 equal parts, or as equal as I can manage. And a bench scraper is a really good tool for this. Okay, perfect. Because remember how sticky this dough was yesterday? Because it refrigerated, it's so much more easy to work with now. Okay, so now I'm just gonna kind of form each, pull my bracelets back, each little like log of dough into like, I don't know, about like 9 inches or so. And they don't have to be perfect, but I'm just kind of smoothing them out a little bit, like so. I have my loaf pan here that is just greased with some butter, non-stick spray, lined with parchment paper to ensure nothing sticks. Okay, so now we're gonna braid the brioche, and we're gonna braid the brioche in the same way you would braid your hair. So I think the easiest thing to do is to take all 3 pieces and kind of pinch them at the top, and then literally just braid it the same way you braid your hair. So just keep doing that motion. Perfect. Okay. Here we go. Now I have my loaf pan, and I'm just going to pinch the bottom. I'm gonna carefully just drop this in here. And I also wanna know if for some reason, you don't know how to braid hair, or you're having a hard time braiding all 3 strands, you could just braid 2 strands and cross them over a couple times. That's fine as well. This is totally optional, like I said. Okay, so now that the bread is braided, we're gonna cover this in plastic wrap and put this in a warm spot to rise for an hour and a half. Okay, so an hour and a half in a warm spot later, and this is what you get. As you can see, this brioche has really gotten nice and puffy, and that is excellent. That's exactly what we're looking for. So the finishing touch is just an egg wash, which is simply 1 egg mixed with a little bit of milk or water, like about a teaspoon of milk or water. I'm actually just using the egg whites from yesterday that I reserved from when we used the yolks. So you could do that, or you could use a fresh egg, whatever you want to do. Just brush this over the top. When there was about 30 minutes left of the brioche rising, what I did was preheated the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, just so I give it enough time to get nice and hot, and it is ready to go. So into the oven this goes for about 50 to 55 minutes. You'll know when it's done when the top is nice and golden brown, and you could even insert like a toothpick into the center and make sure it comes out clean to know if it is finished. And after this bakes, I'm gonna give you a close-up of just how absolutely delicious and divine this brioche is, and I cannot wait to show you how fluffy it is, because you're gonna lose your mind. It's so good. So I'll see you then. Okay, so 55 minutes later, and this is what you get. It is absolutely beautiful. So once this comes out of the oven, you want to let it cool in the pan for 5 minutes, then remove it from the pan, put it on a cooling rack like I've done here, and let it sit for at least an hour. You want this to cool completely before you indulge. So, as always, for the full written recipe and instructions, head to myblogmindymakes.com. I'll put the link for that in the description box below. Click on the link, the recipe will come right up, and make this brioche. I promise you're gonna love it, and let me know what you think, because I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.